Father Chris Opham, aka Pilgrim Padre here, discussing vaccines, especially the topic of the COVID vaccine that's been ongoing recently. There's been a lot of misinformation out there. I've heard a lot of Catholics say things to the effect of that the vaccines contain aborted fetal cells. There's only 2 vaccines in production that are in phase 3 trials that were developed using aborted fetal cells, and that's AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson. They're only in phase 3 trials. The others, the Pfizer, which has been approved for emergency use now by the FDA, was developed without using any cells from aborted fetuses. They did, that is, in developing and making the actual vaccine, in doing lab testing, they did use, some of their tests did use abortion-derived cell lines. The same with Moderna. Moderna, that's coming up for approval, was developed and produced morally without any issue. The lab testing, unfortunately, did include some cell lines that used abortion-derived cells. The Novavax AB, which is in phase 3 trials, also was developed and produced morally. The testing, again, the same issue. Some tests were done on abortion-derived cell lines. The same with the Inovio, which is in phase 1-2 trials. The Sanofi or GlaxoSmithKline and the Merck were both developed and produced morally, but there's no information currently as to what their lab testings have done. So right now what we have is a choice between vaccines that were developed morally and produced morally, but then tested with a cooperation with evil, or vaccines that were developed immorally, that is, with aborted fetal cell tissue used in the production of the vaccine. The choice is clear, folks. You know, both the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith and the Compendium of Catholic Social Teaching make it clear that, you know, when our health is at stake, we could even use, if there were no alternatives, vaccines that were derived and produced immorally. The sin would not be ours, it would be the people who are making the vaccines, and we as Catholics are supposed to still put pressure on the pharma industry to not use abortion-derived cell lines for anything. But the cooperation with evil that's there is small enough, or it's minute enough or removed enough that one is not imputing guilt. One is not sinning by taking such a vaccine. Now, my personal opinion is better go with that which was the most morally sound. And those right now are the 2 that are coming out, the Pfizer and the Moderna, which have been produced and developed, that is, in the actual production of the vaccine without any use of fetal cells or abortion-derived cells. Again, not much we can do about how they're testing it. I know that's a concern for us to continue to be aware of and to continue to fight against. But it doesn't negate the good of the vaccine itself. So know that if you receive one of those 2 vaccines, you're not sinning. If you have no choice, say in your area, in your country, only a vaccine comes out against COVID that only is derived from abortion fetal cells, and you decide for the good of others and for your own health to get it, know that you're not sinning also. Okay? It's for us all to be fighting against the use of abortion-derived cells in medicine, but at the same time, we have to take into consideration what our church teaches us in terms of remote cooperation with evil. If we had to be completely and totally exempt from any cooperation with evil, there's a lot of things we wouldn't do. We wouldn't pay taxes, and we certainly wouldn't be voting for politicians that support the death penalty or that support war, even. So there is such a thing as remote cooperation with evil, very remote. The question that remains for us is this: does a person have to get a vaccine? The answer is no. Somebody may have health issues that would prevent them from getting a vaccine because the vaccine would either make their health issues worse or they may not be able to receive vaccines. So that's for them to determine with their own healthcare provider. The church is encouraging people to get vaccines, but it's not saying that they have to. The other thing too is if somebody has a qualm of conscience about the fact that some of these vaccines even utilized aborted fetal cells in the testing, and they wish to not cooperate with evil in that regard, or have even the remote cooperation with evil, their qualm of conscience also is a valid reason enough for them not to get a vaccine. That is, that they are left to their individual conscience to do that. So what we see coming out is an encouragement by the USCCB that reminds people of the generalized statements of our Catholic moral teaching, our Catholic social teaching, which says that the use of vaccines, is a moral obligation for the good of the health of a community and a society, but it doesn't override individual conscience and individual considerations, both in terms of health and in terms of qualms of conscience. So take it as encouragement, saying, okay, look, you're not committing sin if you receive the vaccine, and you are free of your own opinion and your own discernment whether to receive a vaccine or not. You're encouraged to, but it's not a sin not to get a vaccine either. So that's my take on the vaccines. If you want more information about the vaccine candidates, COVID-19 vaccine candidates, and analysis in terms of which ones are being used, are being produced ethically and whatnot, check out the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and they have a graphic that will show you which vaccines are good and which are to be avoided. So thank you so much for listening.